So we are going to create a very simple MVC app. I'm going to go ahead and launch Visual Studio 2022, and I'm going to create a new project. The language type should be C#. Then you want to make sure you're looking at all platforms and all project types. And in the search box, you're going to key in MVC. And what we want to pick is ASP.NET Core Web App Model View Controller. And then click on Next. We are going to name this thing MVC First App. By default, it goes into your username, source folder, and a repos folder. Okay, so by default, it's going to go in here. And you can see that I have additional folders that I organize my stuff into because I have a lot of MVC apps. So I actually have a 2023 folder that I'm going to put this in. Okay, so by default, unless you have a lot of apps, I would just keep it in repos. Make sure you have a little check mark next to place solution and project in the same directory. If you remember, the solution file is how you can get back into Visual Studio applications, and we want that in the same folder as your project. I'm going to click on Next. As far as the framework version, we've got .NET 6, .NET 7, at this time .NET 8 is in beta, and so I tend to pick the one with long-term support. Why does this matter? Sometimes the different versions kind of shuffle things around. They organize things different in your MVC app. But the most important thing for you to remember is that whatever version you pick, when you add in Entity Framework, that has to be the same version. So if you're going to connect to any kind of backend database using Entity Framework, make sure you pick the same version as your ASP.NET framework. In our little app, what we're doing is pretty simple, so we are not connecting to a database. I'm going to pick .NET 6, make sure configure for HTTPS is on. At this time, we're not going to do authentication because we're trying to keep it simple. And we do not want to use top-level statements, so make sure that little check is on and click Create. And it should bring you into a new project window. And by default, you'll notice this is an MVC project. We have a model folder, a controller folder, and a view folder. And if you expand them out, you'll see that there is a controller. There's kind of a default model. And we have under Home, Views and Home, we have some default views. You'll also notice that the Home controller and this error view model are C# files. The files that are listed in the views are not C# files. It's a C# HTML, which is really called a razor page. And so we can look at these pages, but you'll notice when you look at them that, yep, there's some HTML in here, but you're also going to notice something called razor code. And that code lets you insert ASP.NET commands into your HTML. So let me look here. So a lot of this is going to look familiar, right? I'm looking at the layout page under shared, and this is our structure for an HTML5 document. Okay, and we've got a head and body section, just like we normally would. We have a navigation section. Okay, so that's the navigation bar. But then you'll notice that there is code that starts with an @ sign. Okay, and this is Razor code. Okay. And so that is something that you will be learning. It's like its own little language. So you'll be learning more about that. And also, you'll notice that in a lot of these, we have classes. And so the classes that we use are from Bootstrap. That is how the formatting is done. So you will also be learning Bootstrap. Now, these little apps are designed to run right out of the box. So we can click on the Run button. And by default, it does a little build. And then it launches the app. And you can look at the privacy page and the home page. Clicking on MVC and home does the same thing. Okay, but not a whole lot to this, but it does run. So I'm going to minimize that. Anytime you want to stop the running app, you can actually click on the Stop Debugging button, and it brings you back into your app.